The lightweight title of the world is up for grabs, and we have Charles Oliveira taking on Islam Makhachev at UFC 280 this weekend, and I have the betting tips, technical breakdown, and prediction for you. Hey guys, welcome back to Ascendant MMA. UFC Christmas is here. I can't believe it's finally on this weekend. We've got UFC 280, Charles Oliveira taking on Islam Makhachev in what is easily one of the most anticipated cards I can remember in my kind of whole period really being involved in MMA, and I'm super excited myself. I know the whole community is excited, so it's a banger of a card. There is so many good fights. We're going to run through actually doing breakdowns for the whole main card. We've also got a giveaway that we're doing at the end, so make sure you just hang around for that. We're going to be giving away some good stuff, so stick around to the end and see how you got to get involved. But yeah, we'll recap also last week, but enough from me. I wanted to really get into these fights. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the first fight. So the first fight we're going to break down on this card is going to be Manon Fiorot taking on Katlyn Chookagian. So this is the only female fight on the whole main card, and it's actually a bit of a banger. So we've got, the rising star in Manon Fiorot taking on her hardest test in Katlyn Chookagian, who's been a long time top ranked contender, pretty much the one fighting off these up-and-comers before they get to Shevchenko, and either shutting him down or proving that they're good enough to fight Shevchenko. So really interested in this one. So let's start with Manon. Southpaw fighter, mainly interesting mix of kind of a Thai and karate style. She's got kind of the more compact offensive and defensive shell of a Thai fighter, but she uses like the side kick in a very karate style way rather than a teep. That's her main attack, really. She looks to employ that side kick very early and very often, catches you as you are aiming to try and come in and close distance, and she drives that heel right in the gut. Her variety of kicks is pretty solid. Besides that, she's got outside leg kicks that are really sharp. Her body kick's really nice as well, especially when she's got the opposite stances, and she's got kind of quick, like oblique style side kicks too. In terms of her grappling, it's pretty basic in guard stuff. She keeps the arms and the elbows tucked in tight. She isn't really super adventurous besides looking for some quick ground and pound. And then she kind of looks to reestablish her range. She actually has a sneaky good whizzer kick, like the judo style hip toss takedown. I think this is mainly because of her strength and her ability to kind of lock in overhooks and use her body really well. When her opponent is conditioned to expect that side kick coming in when they move forward, she will like hop it up as a feint. And then it will kind of just stifle the exchange and make them start again. When Manon is kind of moving backwards, her hands are pretty limited in what she throws, kind of solely looks for her lead hand hooks and angles off center, and looks to reestablish. I don't really know how I feel about her defense, honestly. It's pretty limited, like not a lot of head movement. Her footwork and her ability to move laterally off the attacking line is okay. To me, she's just far, far more dangerous when she's the one dictating the pace and moving forward. And, when her opponent is consistently walking it down, it seems like she's just trying to stick and move and outpoint people. But when she's walking girls down and being the aggressor, it looks like she's far more willing to kind of hurt girls and finish fights. Just two very distinct styles that she has. So I'm interested to see which one we go for here. Now on to Chookagian. As I said, she's long been the gold standard for flyweight, and the second to last boss before you step up and fight Valentina. She's got a very, very well-known style, which is based around volume, sticking and moving, and just being kind of louder and landing more, and generally just cruising, outpointing her opponents who try and swing big and land big on her. She's very long and rangy for the division. She's got good footwork and has the ability to keep the fight where she wants it, just in range where she can, land jabs, land crosses, interchange to teep, and kind of just tap away at her opponents. When she does close distance and enter clinches, she's very good at wrapping her opponents up with overhooks, moving their bodies as she uses her knees just to tap. She also actually has a fair amount of tricky little foot sweeps and knee taps to get the fight to the ground. Defensively in the clinch, she uses her long limbs really, really well against the cage to keep the fight standing. She's got good balance. It really works for her. Similar to Manon, she doesn't really have particularly good striking defense. She's quite stationary and hittable. And, if you land on her, there's a good chance that she's landing just as much or, even twice as much. On the ground, I actually think she's a little underrated, to be honest with you. She's got a pretty good little guard, mainly built off her long limbs. She's, able to maintain advantageous positions. And when she's off her back, she frames really well and actually threatens like a fair amount of submissions. They don't all come off, obviously, but they work to change where the fight is taking place and just reestablish her dominance. This is going to be a great fight, in my opinion. In terms of Manon's fights thus far in the UFC, I think it's pretty fair to say that her level of competition has been on the lower end. Her 2 finish wins have been over, Tabitha Ricci, who was up in weight on short notice, and Victoria Leonardo, who's just kind of not very good, sorry. She was dominant over Silva, Myra Brenner Silva, and her fight with Jennifer Maia was competitive, but a clear win. Chookagian has been around at the top of the division for a long time. To me, kind of this fight comes down to whoever's the aggressor and the one moving forward in this fight. I think they'll be the one that is able to land more. They'll be dictating range. They'll be disengaging and re-engaging on their own terms. They'll be able to force clinch exchanges and probably several takedowns off the cage. I think Manon being more physical and strong will help her when Chookagian tries to use her frame in the clinch, and she'll be able to kind of negate these positions. I do think with her hands that Chookagian will probably have more success, but in terms of the kicks, I think Manon's obviously going to have more power, more variety, and she's going to use that side kick and just, specifically the inside leg kick to slow the movement of Chookagian down. This will be a very close fight, and I can see Manon landing the more powerful strikes while Chookagian's probably landing slightly more volume. And I think, honestly, this one's got a split decision written all over it to me. I don't really hate either side. I think Chook's probably slightly over the odds. I think it's probably a 50-50 fight, really. Maybe a slight lean to Manon. Pick is going to be Manon Fiorot by a split decision, but it's not a confident one. I can see either side, but that's the pick for now. So the next fight we're going to break down on this card, we've got Beneil Dariush taking on Mateusz Gamrot. Again, another belter of a fight. This is insane. Yeah, let's just get right into it. Let's start with Beneil. I kind of feel really sorry for Beneil a little bit. He really struggles to get his name in there with the big guys and kind of get the matchups that he really deserves. He's coming back here to a really tough fight after some time off. I think he had a broken ankle, lower leg injury. But yeah, he's coming back after some time off. His striking style to me is very interesting. He's actually got decent power, and we've seen him crack a lot of guys, but technically he's not really great. It's kind of all built off his pressure moving forward. If he's the one moving backwards, he's far more hittable and vulnerable. He's pretty big for the Division 2, and his striking kind of showcases this. He's able to just throw that from these weird angles, and you see that in the Close knockout. Close was throwing down center line. His head was staying there, whereas Beneil was slightly getting his head off and throwing these overhands from weird angles, and it just works for him. He's elite on the ground. He's got very, very good scrambling ability, and it's very good knack for just ending up in advantageous positions. I highly recommend to go back and watch the second Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. The scrambles in that were absolutely insane. Two jiu-jitsu guys, not massive wrestlers. Beneil obviously probably more of a wrestler than Ferreira, just being a jiu-jitsu guy, but insane scrambles in that fight. Really, really highly recommend watching that. I feel like Beneil's style just kind of lends itself to somewhat competitive fights, unless he's really badly knocking you out, which he's got a lot of highlight reel knockouts, or, subbing you. The decisions that he has are very, very competitive generally. Defensively on the feet, it isn't ideal, especially when he's trying to pressure you. He pushes forward really hard, keeps that head on center line for the most part, and he's kind of very prone to overextend and muscle his shots. I quite like his rear body kick too, which he throws out of southpaw nicely, and he's got pretty good step-in knees, which I think will be a good tool for him to be using against Gamrot, who is going to be feinting down or looking to shoot on him. Onto Gamrot. Gamrot's a southpaw. He can switch, and I've noticed that when he does shoot takedown, it's generally out of southpaw, so he's obviously more comfortable going down to that right knee first. I think he needs to work slightly on setting his kicks up because, his opponents have had some success timing him coming in. If he doesn't, put some hands before the kicks. He got dropped by a big left overhand when throwing a leg kick. He doesn't have the best defense, and we have seen that his body defense can be exploited by kicks, specifically in his fight against Garam. Garam had a lot of success finishing all these combos with kicks. And that's just a Thai rule. You get kicked, you kick back. I don't think Beneil is going to be able to do that in this one, but it is interesting moving forward. He has beautiful timing on his level changing and catching kicks. I would say that Gamrot is probably superior in mixing his craft up. I don't think that necessarily means he's better at striking or grappling separately, but being able to flow between those two arts a little more comfortably than Beneil. In his last fight, I got to say, he did surprise me. Fully expected Arman to be able to handle him a bit easier. And while Arman, in my opinion, did win, it was super close and far closer than I expected it to be. The grappling exchanges were very, very close. And I think Arman probably would out-wrestle Beneil, which gives me more faith in Gamrot in this one. I like the fact that Gamrot is just fighting very consistently. He's got slight youth, and while he's less experienced on the big stage, I think this will probably allow him to be fresher and just have more to give in the fight. I think he'll come out fast. I think he's able to out-grapple Beneil early, probably win round 1 and 2 before slowly starting to slow down. And I think we'll see Beneil really rally back and probably win the third. I think this is going to be a close fight, and I think we'll see some really cool grappling exchanges, but I wouldn't be surprised if they almost cancel out and we see a bit more striking. And if it does do that, I favour the Gamrot side. This is going to be a close fight, but again, I favour the Gamrot side, especially after what he did to that podcast host. If you haven't seen that, there's one of the funniest clips I have ever seen. I'll make sure Luke, our editor, puts it in here. He almost killed a podcast host live on air with a standing guillotine. He almost snapped his neck. And the sounds that this guy makes, just listen to this. You can't tell me you watch that and don't think Mateusz Gamrot's going to win this fight. But yeah, enough mucking around. The pick's going to be Mateusz Gamrot by unanimous decision. So the next fight we're going to be breaking down on this one is Petr Yan taking on Sean O'Malley. I can't believe this isn't a co-main. That just shows you how stacked this card is. God, I'm excited. Let's start. Petr Yan, got that in-your-face, aggressive, pressuring style mixed with that technical striking. The nickname No Mercy, completely true, rings true. That's such a good nickname for him. The Tiger Muay Thai trained fighter, he uses wrestling to keep fights standing generally and utilizes the power in his punches as well as his kicks supremely well. Yan's just a scary dude because he naturally kind of comes out slow. He'll download the data and then he just figures out how to break you down slowly. His head movement's really, really nice. And his strongest punch would probably have to be a hook, I would say. He also switches stances mid-combo beautifully. And I can see a lot of success doing that against O'Malley in the fact that it's going to aid to close distance while still being very tricky and hard to read. His defensive capabilities when moving forward and backwards are pretty remarkable. He has a high boxing guard and he parries really, really well. But where his style excels against boxers, it can leave him really vulnerable to body and leg attacks, especially if you can counter and move quickly out of range. Yan is also very good at closing range when his opponent, throws these real flashy spinning techniques, which Sean does a lot. He's great at crowding the kicker and forcing clinch exchanges off this. And that's where he looks to employ his, tricky foot sweeps, the Russian Sambo kind of throws. He surprised me a little bit in that Sterling fight. I really thought he'd have an easier time with the grappling, but I don't know if it's because Sterling's so athletic or it's just an inefficiency, but he didn't look as good in that fight. I think the Sandhagen fight is going to be key to this one. A fairly similar fighter to Sean in that, he's always kind of sticking, moving, angling out. He'll do like the two-step in and out. Very hard to hit. And he's long, he's rangy. So I think Peter having that 5-round experience against him is going to come in really, really handy here. So on to Sean. I straight up, I think if Sean's to win this fight, he needs to come out hard and fast. He needs to establish that jab, attack the legs like Aldo did, attack the body to slow him down, and kind of just be generally tricky and just vary the strikes. He's long, he's rangy for this division. He's got long arms, even longer legs. His movement's just so nice, and he's just a really confusing opponent to come up against in that he's kind of always constantly bouncing. He's laterally moving one way, and then, on the drop of a dime, he's out the other side and he's, ducking under. Really good head movement. He controls range well, and he uses such a variety of striking attacks that just kind of elongate his reach. One thing that worries me is that he just kind of seems fragile at times. He can be hurt consistently with these weird little injuries and I don't know if it doesn't drink enough milk, but there's just some weird injuries that consistently pop up that scare me. One of my favorite things about Sean's style is his ability to fight moving backwards. He's just as quick and powerful and able to establish the range where he wants to fight, and not vice versa where someone else is dictating. It's always him dictating. And, we see a lot of fighters struggle moving backwards. He's just as comfortable fighting off that back foot, if not more. So, when you pair this with his constant feints, with his, his hand, or that turning over a hip, or his leg feints, and his striking speed, it can be a really difficult game plan to break down and get through early. This fight's an interesting one because I kind of want to be on Sean's side. I think the 3 rounds is a complete ploy on his side. I think it was a big bargaining tactic, and the only reason we're probably seeing this fight, I think it was, if this was over 5 rounds, I don't think we see this fight happen. I almost think it's a couple of years too early for Sean, but in saying that, Petr he comes out so slow, and generally in 5 rounds this will benefit you, but in 3 rounds it's a complete, if you let your opponent get off to such a start that Sean's going to come out, establish that jab and land on you early, I think he can almost run away with this fight early. And I'm worried that if I'm on the Petr side, he won't be able to chase him down late. I think, the footwork on the outside for Sean's going to be massive. If I'm Petr, I want to be, I don't want to be downloading as much data. I want to be pressuring back foot. I want to be, kicking the legs out, attacking the body, always finishing my combos with kicks, which Petr is really, really good at doing, to negate, Sean slipping away and wasting in exchange. Again, I think this is a closer fight than the odds would indicate. I see past the victory for both guys. I'm considering taking the shot on the dog on this one. I think I'm not going to, because it's just a big step up in competition. I think it might be slightly too early. So I'm going to be on the Petr Yan side. But in saying that, I do really see a solid path to victory for Sean in this one. But I'm going to rely on the more known commodity in Petr. I think he'll be able to get some takedowns, probably lay, and attack the body of Sean, attack the legs, and then, he not attack the head as much. And I think, while he might lose that first round, he'll probably come out the second and third, and he'll probably start to wear on Sean, maybe hurt him quite a bit. And then we'll look back at this fight and go, okay, if this fight was in, a couple of years, it's Sean's fight to win. But for now, the pick's going to be Petr Yan by unanimous decision. So the next fight we're going to break down on this one is the co-main event of the evening. We've got Aljamain Sterling, who's taking on TJ Dillashaw. So I want to start with Aljo in this one. To me, he seems very competent in both stances on the feet. I kind of like the way he circles on the outside, employs his takedown feints aimed to kind of get you to throw counters and just engage, or kind of just plant your feet, to which he then counters, which I do really enjoy seeing. Looks to me like he's far more comfortable throwing kicks out of orthodox in all areas of the kicking game. Again, he'll circle, and then plan himself and catch him moving in and use that to accentuate his power. He uses his length really well, and he elongates it with nice teeps up the middle, and he also has a nice switch stance cross, which does catch his opponents off guard. I think his striking has kind of improved tenfold since the early days in the UFC. Offensively, probably not so much. I think he just, has worked on all these tools rather than gain new tools. But defensively, he's so much more intelligent than he's ever been previously. And I only really noticed it when I did a lot of tape study on this. He's far more aware of his slips and moving his head irresponsibly. We saw him get knocked out really badly against Marlon Moraes, and it was completely due to that. Dipping where he shouldn't have put his head so low and just getting caught with a knee. And it's good to see a fighter acknowledge that, learn from it, and make his game, far more well-rounded. I also think that a lot of his recent improvement can kind of be attributed to that recent neck surgery that we see him recover from. It was clearly really impeding him, and to see him be better for it now, it's a really good sign. You can see it in his physical frame. It's just improved out of sight, and he looks far, far leaner and far more muscly than he has ever. So I highly recommend go over and check his Instagram. The dude is in incredible shape. Like, you'll look at it even compared to his last fight, he's far more jacked now. On the canvas, you don't really have to talk about this factor too much because everyone knows that he's just elite. The guy's a whiz. I think Yan did really exceptionally well to be able to defend a full back take sequence from Aljo for 2 full rounds. In my opinion, in any other fight in the top of the division, I think he probably finishes a lot of the guys in that same situation. I think his takedowns can be a little off timed and a little predictable, and he doesn't always follow through and turn the corners as a pure wrestler would. In saying that, he is very good at getting the fight to the ground in a variety of ways rather than just blast doubles, especially in those weird scrambling opportunities. So I don't really hate it, and it doesn't particularly affect his game negatively. So on to TJ, one of the most well-rounded fighters we've seen, one of the best bantamweight fighters in history. I think his game all revolves off his insane footwork, basically. It's that footwork that, Dwayne Ludwig and Bang Muay Thai have drilled into him. And it almost actually seems a little bit, to me anyway, Dominic Cruz influence, which is weird because they were obviously such rivals coming up with the, Team Alpha Male versus Dom Cruz rivalry. And it's hard to explain, but, those weird angles that he'll figure eight in on, the strange angles that he's able to whip those high kicks in and catch guys off guard. He's a very intelligent fighter, and we've seen that, the Cody Garbrandt fight is a good example. While he did almost get finished in that one, his ability to read the fact that Cody, was keeping those hands low and to be able to step in and then take that kick high, just incredible. I think it's important to note his mindset. He's a grinder, he's a dog. He's very, very mentally tough, and it's something that doesn't get mentioned enough. Even though the whole cheating thing and whatever, he's so competitive, and you can tell that about him, that he wants to be the best in the room, and it's a good trait to have. The cheating's not, but to have that mindset that you need to be the best, hard to come up against, man. I don't know if you have a wrestling advantage in this one, but he does have very good wrestling. Obviously, Team Alpha Male, born and bred. Very good entries, very strong physically, very good follow through, and just good against the cage. In my opinion, since we've seen him come back in that Sandhagen fight, he was far more hittable in that fight. He wore a lot of damage and he didn't wear it particularly well. And, Sandhagen's obviously a better striker overall than Sterling, but to be that hittable and again, you have to attribute a bit of it to blowing his knee out very early. But at the same time, he's coming back here after knee surgery at 37, I think he is. That's old for the bantamweight division. That's a tough one. I think an important note as well is the scrambles with Sandhagen. Sandhagen isn't a jiu-jitsu player, and he caught TJ a couple of times with some really tricky scrambles and, threatened a lot of submissions. And I think if TJ kind of plays that game like he did with Sandhagen here with Sterling, I think he can end up in a lot of trouble. And I don't think it's rude to say he's past his prime. As I said, 37 is very old for the bantamweight division. Your reflexes start to go. And I think with the, the knee surgery and stuff like that, it's going to really start to slow him down. In my opinion, we see this, if we see this TJ versus Sterling fight in both of their primes, I think we probably get a different outcome. I think Sterling's improved so much on the feet, and to me, Petr Yan and TJ kind of similar fighters in that they want to pressure you backwards, they want to consistently move forward, they want to be able to read you, make reads, counter off that. They have good power, they got good volume, they got good grinding ability. So I think that the fact that Sterling's just come off 5 rounds with Petr is very, very. It's a big plus in my books for him. I think Sterling's cardio is far improved. He's able to go pretty decent, hard 5 rounds. Yeah, I like Sterling in this fight, man. I think the wrestling exchanges, while TJ probably will be able to negate them, I think Sterling's a far, far superior scrambler. And I don't think the difference on the feet is enough that TJ will really dominate there. And I don't think the fight's going to stay there. So while I do favour TJ on the feet, I think Sterling will be able to hold his own, and I think the movement will really annoy TJ, frustrate him. I think Sterling will be able to use a variety of kicks to slow him down, and yeah, I think he might either finish him late or kind of cruise to a decision victory. Yeah, so the pick is going to be Aljamain Sterling via submission in round 4. So last but not least, definitely not least, we've got the main event with Charles Oliveira taking on Islam Makhachev in what is one of the most technical, most difficult fights I've ever had to break down in the history of doing this. While I'm recording this now, I kind of almost still haven't really decided what side I want to be on. There's so many positives on both sides. So let's get into this one. We'll start with Charles. man, put some respect on this guy's name. The disrespect that we've seen Oliveira take for years now is really strange to me, but it's good to see him finally get his dues. We have two wild fan bases on either side here. So to be honest with you, whatever way I go, I'm kind of a lose-lose. Like, the Brazilians are going to come after me and want to kill me in the favela. And if I pick Charles, I think the Dagestanis are going to want to kill my whole family. So bit of a lose-lose situation here, to be honest. But Charles, very underrated double leg. If you swing wildly, his timing to go under that punch is incredible. It's really, really good. And he doesn't get enough credit for, I think, his wrestling entries. So just something to note there. The lead leg teep, huge weapon. We've seen it in a lot of his fight recently. You know, he's very light on that front foot. He's able to pop it up, check kicks. But he also uses it as that, you know, in exchange for the jab to push away, keep distance, all while stabbing at the body. But it also threatens that, you know, knee up the middle at the same time. You know, think about touching your left foot on the ground as you pop it up. You know, you're able to smash that knee up very quickly. And I think he'll establish that early just to say, Islam, if you're going to shoot, you're going to fucking wear a knee. It's just a big triple threat, and I really like it. He can be vulnerable to combos in the pocket. We see this in kind of all his fights, boxing combos in the pocket. He can take one or two shots, but when the 3 or 4 punch combos come, you know, his lack of head movement just means that he's going to get wobbled. Obviously, his recovery time's good, but at the same time, his ability to recover has come that as a result of fighters not wanting to engage with him on the ground, and he's not going to have that luxury in this fight. You know, I don't think Islam's going to be scared to go to ground with him. His attacks down the middle are elite, straight shots down the pipes, exchanges using his jab for teeps, off shots, he'll come up, he'll clinch, and he'll punish with knees to the midsection before exiting exchanges. His worst attribute, I say it every single fight, his lack of head movement. We see this all the time. It always results in him being knocked down. But at the same time, this leads to his best attribute. And I say this all the time as well. His jiu-jitsu ability and his ability to, you know, recover while his opponents are hesitant to engage. It just gives him that time to get his senses, come back to and continue the forward pressure. I really think a key to Charles' success is his ability to just be hugely damaging at all times, but overall in the clinch too. You know, he's lethal at landing those big knees, slicing with elbows when exiting, and just wears on you in the clinch. You know, his cross to back take is one of the main ways, and one of the slickest ways Oliveira is able to close distance and get in that clinch range. He'll step in with his cross, he'll shoot under kind of any counters or work up from a single leg, and depending on how you react, he'll either take your back or he'll engage in that clinch and he'll just absolutely wear on you. I think he also has pretty underrated ground and pound. It doesn't get a huge mention because when we see him, it's kind of mainly off his back, but he does have very lethal ground and pound. And his forward pressure, man, that he employs on these people is just completely insane. He's a car crash fighter. He forces wild exchanges as both parties come in, and he's able to do this with just kind of how elite and just damage. He's so damage based. Like, he's damaging his strikes on the outside, how damaging they are. He's got the teep up the middle, the leg kicks, the straight shots. He uses all this, you know, as he pushes you back, and he just picks his shots at you so wisely in wears on you. And I think his technicality on the feet is incredibly underrated. And it's developed tenfold in the last few years. And it's kind of just crazy the damage he's able to inflict and wear on you in such a short amount of time. It's kind of, I would even give it the equivalent of what Khabib would do to people, but on the ground. You know, in the past, he's shown the ability to be worn at, to be taken down, be smothered, and just worked over with ground and pound. And obviously, it's a poignant point coming into this fight. You know, it's really hard to acknowledge this without actually acknowledging the clear shift in his character, his body, and his mentality. So on to Islam. Man, where do you start with these Dagestani guys? We know the history and the upbringing of Islam and Khabib, and you know, Khabib and Islam really being the two most dominant Dagestani almost fighters in the UFC ever. I don't really want to waste too much time discussing the background. We all kind of know this, you know, the passing of the father and things like that. But what I do want to mention is kind of the differences between Islam and Khabib, style-wise. I don't think Islam's pressure is kind of anywhere near to what Khabib would employ against his opponent. Islam's far more comfortable on the feet, and he's just far more comfortable engaging in striking exchanges. He's kind of happy to hang on the outside, use kicks and crosses and overhands. You know, he doesn't show quite the tenacity to force wrestling exchanges on his opponents as Khabib did. You know, when Khabib entered the octagon, you knew it was inevitable. It was a matter of time. You knew what was going to happen. Khabib was going to use a lot of level change feints. He was going to use the overhands to close distance. And he's going to use his forward pressure to time shots and just wear on you against the cage. Compared to Islam, who is, you know, he's kind of content to spend more time on the feet and work there. And I don't think he's as physically strong and smothering as Khabib. It's also really important to notice the distinction between Dagestani style wrestling. Their whole wrestling style is built on smothering, top pressure, holding in advantageous positions, you know, landing ground and pound, and mainly just position over submission. They have very, very strategic shots when they come into range. They don't just shoot from the outside, you know, pure doubles and singles. They'll force you back against the cage. They'll enter with safer positions like clinch exchanges, and then they'll use that Sambo style trip and throw to get you back on the mat. And once you're there, they hold dangerous positions like, you know, 3/4 mount, half guard, and they use arm traps, you know, Dagestani handcuff. They hold it under your body so you cannot move. And they'll land shots on you. You know, their ability to just wear on opponents and make your opponent just break mentally is insane. You know, you can see it on their opponents' faces in, you know, as early as the second round. They just do not want to be in that octagon. They can't handle it. Defensively, Islam's pretty rare on the feet. In saying that, his main defense is kind of offense, and it's very hard to hit someone when you're cautious about, you know, overextending into a takedown. And I would describe Islam's style as a really good mix of Umar Nurmagomedov's, you know, heavy kicking style paired with that Dagestani wrestling game. You know, Islam's ability to just chain wrestle, advance position, and just dominate fighters is really second to none at the moment. He has a very, very sneaky trip that he commonly uses. I picked up on it in the clinch. You know, he'll wait for his opponent to try and knee him. And whilst that knee is in midair before it's able to, you know, get control on the ground, he'll use an underhook on one side and overhook on the other. And he'll just use a really, really common foot sweep to flip his opponent and just land on top. One main argument I hear to consider, you know, what side to settle on in this fight is obviously the lower level of competition that Islam has faced in comparison to Charles recently. And, you know, while I do think this is relevant and, you know, probably worth mentioning, I also think you have to remember just how dominant Islam has been against the opponents that he has had, and as well as the fact that how many opponents have refused to fight him or just ducked him. You know, you have to take this into consideration when you're doing this fight. Again, straight up, this is probably the hands down one of the toughest fights I've ever had to break down. I've watched endless hours of tape, both men, and I honestly am still split how this fight will play out. Striking, I don't think it's wrong to say Charles has the advantage on the feet. You know, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't come out with that insane pressure that we're used to seeing him employ. I expect the long straight strikes of Charles to worry Islam early and to really dictate that pressure and the pace of the fight. In my mind, Islam's main objective will be to come out and avoid damage early, start to wear on Charles, and just take his most dangerous time out of the equation. I'm interested to see Charles's reaction to the early wrestling game of Islam, whether he'll welcome it or, you know, attempt to engage on the ground, or he'll risk burning some of his cardio in order to kind of negate the grappling on the floor and make the striking battle the main exchange. In a fight like this where there are so many questions and possibilities, I'm trying to lean to what I know and probabilities. You know, to me, Charles's lack of hesitation to engage on the ground, you know, could well be the difference in this fight. You know, all of the Dagestani's opponents are completely terrified of the takedown and the exchange on the ground, that it completely neuters their offense. And I just don't think we see that here with Charles at all. Now, this isn't to say that he's a superior grappler, because technically I think he's probably not. I think he's a lot more dangerous and a far superior grappler than anyone Islam has faced before. I think that's fair to say, but I don't think he's technically, you know, better than Islam. The forward pressure is going to just reduce the amount of shots that he has to defend against, I think. And I really expect him to chew that lead leg up of Islam. He'll attack the body early and he'll make him pay and just put doubt in his mind. I think Islam probably gets some ground time early in round one, and we'll see some cool scrambles. And as I said, in a fight where there are more questions than answers currently, I'm I'm going to slightly favour the more experienced side. I think the more dangerous side and the side that is currently riding, such a huge wave of confidence and very little pressure on his shoulders. I like the teeps. I like the pressure moving forward. I like the mastery of the ground game. And I like the mindset of Charles. To me, he's the more proven commodity at this point. And that's not to say he's better. So fucking Dagestanis, don't get in my comments hurling abuse at me. I'm sorry. But right now, I think he's more proven, and it'd be foolish to doubt him right now. I think either side that you land on, I think the possibility of, come Sunday here in Australia, looking like an absolute fool with egg on his face due to a dominant, position on either side is really likely. But I can't move away from my boy. I think Charles is going to get him, man. I just have a feeling. Technically, we could see a bunch of different ways for both fighters. And I think another point to mention is Charles is coming into this fight after getting the surgery in his eyes. He's going to be able to see a lot better, a lot clearer. So I think this will be able to, negate a lot of those knockdowns and things like that. But amazing fight. I don't care what side of the fence you end up on. Flip a coin. This is amazing. I can't wait to see who wins. Either way, both of these guys are good for the division. So really looking forward to it. And ultimately, I think Charles is going to wear on him. And I think Charles might get him out of there early. The pick's going to be Charles via TKO in round 2. Okay, that was bloody tough to get through. Like I said, Dagestanis, Brazilians, you're my boys. Dagestanis, I love you too. Please don't give me too much abuse. But yeah, that wraps up the breakdowns for UFC 280. Just a few closing notes. We've got a few things to go through quickly. So firstly, we're going to be doing a giveaway. If you look on screen, you'll see the graphic here. We're going to be giving away a UFC voucher. So all you have to do to enter is leave a comment how many significant strikes you think there are going to be in the main event and who have you got winning. The winning side doesn't matter. It's going to be more just the significant strikes, but I'm interested to see who everyone's siding with. So make sure you leave that in the comments before the main event. And if there's a double up, we'll go with whoever entered it first. Secondly, we are going to be doing a live fight companion for this card. It's going to be starting at midnight Australian time, which is fucked. And I'll be running off energy drinks and testosterone mainly. So really looking forward to it. Going to have a few mates with me. We're going to be watching the fights live, commentating, talking shit, drinking beers, being dickheads, taking the piss out of each other. It's going to be really fun. So come over and hang out in the chat, leave some comments, and yeah, we'll get up to some mischief there while we watch the fights. Quick recap from last week. You'll see the betting cards here. God, it was a deadly card and I didn't want to engage very much. Pretty disappointed with the parlay. I didn't want to put it in, but I felt like there wasn't enough action, so I kind of forced it, and I'm not happy with myself because it would have been the difference between a positive and a negative night. So we ended minus 0.4 units, but not the worst night. Reads are pretty good, so yeah, just wanted to touch on that quickly. But yeah, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and like this video. It really helps us against the YouTube algorithm. We've picked up a bunch of new subscribers lately, so thanks for subscribing. If you're new to the channel, we've almost doubled our count and our views have been going through the roof, which is insane. So yeah, if you're new to the channel and you want to converse with us directly, head over to our Instagram. Tag will be here at Ascendant.MMA. We talk fights with a bunch of people every single week and we love it. Yeah, we give out our card, our betting card for the week over there too. You'll see a story post. All you got to do is reply to that and we send it across. But yeah, that's enough waffling for me. UFC Christmas coming up. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Come and hang out in the live chat and yeah, enter the giveaway. And that's about it. Thanks for watching if you're still here. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.